right, let's go ahead and do this double exposure one. So from here, first thing you're going to do is turn on the visibility of the beach layer. So you can see this is covering up his entire face. Now when I hit on next, we can play around with the blending modes. And as I drag down, you can see the picture that's behind of the beach is interacting with his face differently. And then when you get into this section, this is where some of the magic kind of happens. So it's getting rid of a lot of the stuff that's on the outside. These start to do other weird things, but sometimes finding the thing that's a little bit off can sometimes create something interesting. So every photo is going to be different, and depending on what layer you have above the photo will interact differently. But for this one, we're going to change this one to screen. And then I'm going to drop the opacity of this layer down to about 85. Remember, you can just highlight inside of here and type it in if you want. Then I'm going to click on next. And then I'm going to take the move tool. And I'm going to drag the beach either to the left or the right until I have it looking the way that I want. I kind of like having a little bit more. Actually, let's see. Yeah, actually, I kind of like it moved over here a little bit with the edge of the beach is kind of pointing towards his nose. And then I'm going to click next. Yours might be slightly different, not a big deal. Go ahead and click on the mask. And then it doesn't really, whoops, I did too. It doesn't really tell you what to do from here. This is where it stops. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to fade some of this in a little bit more, because like right here, I don't think that works really well on the neck. I don't like this area that's happening out here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the brush. So I'm going to come up here and choose my brush tool. I'm going to go in and I'm going to drop my opacity to about 50%. And then brush size, let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger, about 350 or so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap several times. I want to be careful about not getting too close to his face when I do this, or else it's going to erase stuff. So what I'm trying to do is get rid of the stuff that's on the outside. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and make the brush opacity a lot bigger. And then I'm going to shrink the brush down. If you use your squared bracket next to P on your keyboard, the left bracket will make the brush smaller. The right bracket will make the brush bigger. So I'm going to drop this down a little bit, and I'm going to kind of follow along his jacket and just basically erase this portion. So I'm going to do a real quick trick. I'm going to hold down the Option key, and I'm going to click on the mask of the beach. So you can kind of see where I painted. So I can actually come back out here, make my brush bigger, and kind of paint around these outside edges just in case. I want to be careful about not getting too close to this white part in the middle, because that's where the guy's at. So now to get out of that preview of the mask, you just click back on the photo. Now I want to do a little bit of cleanup inside of his body area. So I'm going to drop the opacity down, 58 or so. And I'm going to make the brush a bit smaller. Maybe about 175 or so. Whoops, I do that all the time. I'm going to Command Z. I always end up accidentally painting on the photo instead of the mask. What I want to do here is I want to actually paint on the mask, and I'm just going to start to kind of paint some of this area away. Now, some of the things that I'm noticing, it's a little strong, so I'm going to drop my opacity down a little bit more. This means instead of it painting with black, it's painting with 20% black. So if I really wanted to erase something like around his eyes, I'd have to tap it several times. I'm just going to tap 1, 2, 3. Now I can kind of bring his eyes back. I'm going to tap a couple times on his nose to bring his nose back and kind of where his cheek is. And then I'm just going to kind of tap a few times as I drag around the body and maybe bring his ear back just a little bit. Now, if I wanted to get really kind of fancy, like right here, if I wanted to cut this portion of his head off, I could. This is optional. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. But I'm going to bring the opacity of this up a little bit higher. Whoops. I forgot to switch the color. I'm going to flip-flop that back to white. That's not really doing much because I realized I didn't mask this out. All right, never mind. That was an idea I had on the fly, but we'll go ahead and leave that as it is. So what this is doing is it's taking the original photo and it's blending it in with the pixels that are below. So as I'm moving this around, you can kind of see it's doing different things, but it's really in this lighten and this screen that really starts to do more interesting things. I'm going to turn that back on so now I can see it. If you end up painting away too much, you can switch your color back to black. Tap it a few times to bring this back. And so now you've got this kind of cool little double exposure effect that's happening on this guy. So from there, go ahead and save that, and that'll be another one that you just show me.